Welcome to Buying Sandlot. I'm Kyle Pagan, and on today's show, we have PA State Senator Joseph Picozzi to talk about his youth sports tax credit of $3,000, a proposal for Pennsylvania families. In this episode, we talk about the bipartisanship nature behind it, where the bill is at currently, and he walks us through the entire proposal. But before we get into the episode, I want to thank Event Connect for powering the show today. Event Connect is the operating system for youth sports. Check them out at eventconnectsports.com. Senator Joe Picozzi, thanks for joining Buying Sandlot.
Thank you for having me, Kyle.
Yeah, we really wanted to bring you on. We wanted to talk about your youth sports bill, the credits that you were proposing, I think about a couple months ago. Can you walk us through your proposal for the youth sports tax credit and what inspired it and how you see it helping Pennsylvania families?
So where I'm from, Northeast Philadelphia, youth sports are one of the backbones of our community, right? I mean, it brings parents together, brings neighborhoods together. It's a topic of conversation, all across the Northeast. I was just at Sharky's for dinner the other day. Everyone at the bar was talking about the recent basketball game, right? Youth basketball game. It's one of the most important things for my community. And I talk to families, and it's very hard. I mean, these equipment is super expensive. Trips, travel, if you've got kids in cheerleading, you got to travel all over for those competitions. It's incredibly expensive. It's incredibly burdensome. And I know parents, they're trying to do everything they can to give their kids every opportunity, right? They want to see their kids flourish. But youth sports is very, it's very challenging for families to afford all the expenses that come with it. So that was the impetus behind my legislation was, well, what can we do to help? I've been working with Representative Joe Hogan over in the House, and him and I are very focused on affordability writ large. Right? What can we do to put more money back in your pockets? And another piece of the thinking behind it is, well, we want to incentivize good things, right? Like youth sports is a good thing, right? It teaches kids teamwork. It teaches them collaboration. It gets them physically active. We want to incentivize good things to happen. And to the extent we can use tax policy to do it, all the better.
Why was it important for you to propose this bill?
I mean, for me, I grew up playing sports. I grew up in Boy Scouts. I grew up doing all of these activities. And there was only two of us. It was me and my sister. But if we had more kids in my family, it would have been really tough in a lot of ways. And we were able to do a lot. My dad was a fireman. My mom was a special ed teacher. Things had changed since I was growing up. It's getting harder and harder and harder for families just to be able to afford the basics that we all took for granted, when I was growing up. So for me, it's something I know is so important to my community, something that's important to my family, and something that can make a big difference in people's lives.
Are there any examples of maybe any successful community programs or business models in the state of Pennsylvania that you think could be scaled up or maybe even emulated?
What do you mean in terms of like programs or business models?
Is there any community programs you see in Philadelphia that might be like a gold star, or maybe even in Pennsylvania? I don't know how far you travel out west or whatnot. Something that could be, or maybe even there's a spot in Northeast Philadelphia that you're like, this is a good community program. When I was around, it maybe not might be getting the funding as much as it should when I was younger and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I grew up as part of the Somerton, youth sports program, right? I was on the baseball team, I was on the soccer team, and all across the Northeast, we have local programs based out of their rec centers, based out of these community centers. Torresdale Boys Club is another great example. This one I want to mention is a little different than youth sports, but it's a similar vein. We have a place in my neighborhood, Tacony, where I live now, called Tacony Lab, and it's basically an arts program, right? So they offer free arts classes, all kinds of like arts education for the community, completely free. They have a great physical location. That's something that's important too, is kids getting exposure to the arts, to music. Settlement music schools in my district as well. There's been a talk, because right now where the legislation's at, it's just a co-sponsorship memo. So we're still working on drafting it. And that's how you get the ball rolling, right? So we've accumulated, I think, 5 co-sponsors now, and we're working on getting more. And when you do that, members say, well, I want to get on, but I want to see this. For example, one member said, hey, I want to see a cap of what income qualifies for it, right? We don't want the wealthiest Pennsylvanians getting this tax break. Like, that's fine. We'll figure that out. Another member said, well, I want to broaden the scope of the legislation to include more activities, things that aren't traditionally considered sports, but are important for sort of youth formation. So we're having that discussion. So that's another kind of reason you get these things out there, so you can sort of collaborate and figure out where you can find 26 votes for any piece of legislation.
Gotcha. Is there a timeline, do you think, when you would like to get this passed? You just spoke about a couple of hurdles finding those 26 votes. Is there any other hurdles that, the Pennsylvania citizen should know about?
I mean, look, there's tons, right? The legislative process is very, very difficult, particularly in a tough fiscal environment where right now the budget the governor proposed spends about $5 to $6 billion more than we're projected to take in. So it's a very difficult fiscal environment to fund these programs. So I would say we're a fairly early stage of the process. Sometimes even in this session, it might be kind of laying the groundwork to get it past the next session. I think that's a more realistic timeline. There's only so many legislative calendar days left this year. But the work we're doing now, Representative Hogan and myself, is kind of building this sort of stakeholder group and building the sort of coalition of members who say, this is really important to our communities. We really want to see something like this.
Now, you're a Republican senator, but we always talk about youth sports tax credits or youth sports accessibility. That's a bipartisan issue. I mean, I don't think that's crazy to say. Have you seen your colleagues on the other side? Have they been, easy to talk to about it, understanding the bill? Like, has you face some uphill battles? What's it kind of like on the other side?
So far, so good. I mean, we introduced the legislation, I believe, the first week of this calendar year. So now we're, week 5 or 6 of the calendar year. I believe as of today, we have more Democratic co-sponsors than Republican co-sponsors. So it's been pretty well received, on the other side of the aisle. And in the Senate where I serve, we're very collaborative. We're not really hyper partisan. We really get along. Like people joke about say this thing crossing the aisle or whatever. Now I sit right on the aisle. Right. So I'm right in the middle of the Senate, like physically. And I'm always going over there and talking to other members. And it wasn't until we were in session last week, I was on my way home, I was thinking about, not everybody does that. But I really, really love the Democratic caucus as well. There's a lot of really great public servants, and I've learned a lot from them. I've built really good relationships with them. And so it's received a fairly warm reception. You can double check me on this, but I believe Senator San Siro is a co-sponsor. Senator Marty Flynn joined the legislation recently. There's a few more folks on the other side of the aisle that I'm not going to mention their names until they get on the bill, but we're working with them actively to bring them on. So I think it's been fairly well received.
Nice. Just a question for myself. I'm not really too in the know of the legislation business, the senator business, but with this bill, if it does get passed, would it be the entire state of Pennsylvania, or would it be just your district?
Be the entire state of Pennsylvania. So any working family, any middle class family, there probably will end up being an income cap on it, that has to put a lot of their own money into youth sports, would be able to get some money back in their tax returns.
Do you think there are going to be challenges in getting the proposal over the finish line? Obviously, we talked about it's a pretty bipartisan issue.
Yeah, I do. I mentioned the fiscal environment, right? So whenever you're talking about tax break, you're talking about decreasing revenue. And we're in a situation right now in Harrisburg where, our expenses exceed our revenue every year by billions and billions of dollars. So there's a structural kind of financial challenge that makes tax cuts a little bit more difficult in this environment. But those things don't last forever. The fiscal situation will change at some point, hopefully for the better. And a lot of the work we're doing is kind of preparing ourselves so when the moment's there, this legislation is in position to actually get done.
Have you looked at any other bills in any other states? I know Congressman Josh Gottheimer in NJ5, he passed a youth sports bill. I think it was $1,000 tax credit, I believe. And then I think in the big, beautiful bill, there might have been a $250 tax credit. I don't know if that ever was agreed upon or not, but have you looked at any other bills from around the country, from around even the state, that you've kind of modeled yours off of, or what?
The federal legislation is encouraging, right? I mean, that would apply to everyone in the entire country. And you're seeing some policy moves happening at the federal level that get us excited, right? And the state can always kind of follow and piggyback on different initiatives, even if they're successful or not at the federal level. This legislation, has been proposed in a few other states as well. I think it's sort of a relatively new idea, so I'm not sure where it's been implemented quite yet. And also note we introduced, along with the youth sports tax credit, we introduced a $1,000 physical fitness credit, basically for gym memberships, for personal training classes, for basically anything to sort of help you get in shape. And the way I view this, and part of the way I pitch this to members, even in light of our fiscal environment, is this is an investment. Right, the investing in kids getting active in a time where we have a lot of people who are glued to their phones. Right, investing in kids getting more well socialized, learning teamwork, investing in these youth sports programs, which are fundamental for keeping communities together. Investing in people's health has a positive fiscal impact. You don't see it right away, but by keeping people healthy, we ultimately save the government money.
Why do you think it's taken so long for a proposal like this? It seems like a no-brainer. Have there been any in the past that I just don't know off the top of my head?
Not to my knowledge, at least in Pennsylvania. I don't want to speak. Maybe sometime at some point, but I think it's a different perspective on legislation, right? It's a different perspective on the role of government. My view is that the government should basically work to incentivize things that are good for society and disincentivize things that are not good for society, right? That's why we tax cigarettes and gambling, right? But instead of just taxing vices, we should also be rewarding virtue, right? And incentivizing virtuous behavior, incentivizing good things. And I think, especially younger folks, when they look at the government, it's like, my view is the government plays an active role in society no matter how you slice it. We should be thoughtful about what investments we're making and what kind of society we want to set up a structure to build. We can't make kids join sports teams, right? But we can make it easier for families to allow their kids to have those opportunities.
Is there anything else you're looking for in youth sports? Maybe a bill wise, maybe a credit wise. I know obviously, big thing we talk about right now is sponsorships. Big brands, major brands sponsoring leagues to help subsidize the cost of maybe registration fees or maybe facility fees or maybe, team fees, helping with apparel. Obviously, you probably grew up at the local pizza shop, sponsor the back of your soccer jersey and everything. Is there anything that you're looking for to maybe help make youth sports more accessible other than this tax credit?
That's a cool idea. What can we do to help bring in private sector investment, right? More corporate partners. I mean, we all, like in my community, I sponsor a lot of little league teams myself, right, as a state senator. And our local delis and pizza places, they all do the same thing, right? They got their name on the T-shirt, and so there's an advertising piece to it. And I wonder what else can be done to get the communities to invest more, right? And especially now that we're living in a world where these big companies are coming in. Right, we've got Amazon warehouses in my district. We've got a Walmart. We've got some big companies that have a presence here in Philadelphia, and especially Northeast Philadelphia. What can we do to get them to invest directly in the communities more? It's something I'll have to give a little bit more thought to. I mean, these big corporations do have philanthropic arms, right? But how do you build that bridge and make those connections? Because ultimately, they have to be good neighbors, right? When we bring in these big companies, they have to be good neighbors to the community there.
Is there anything you want people to know? Anything else you want people to know about the youth sports tax credit or the bill or anything that you're working on right now?
Well, I'd say I know this channel is viewed by a lot of coaches, by a lot of people in youth sports. If you have ideas, thoughts, questions, ways you think the legislation could be improved, like I said, we're still kind of drafting the nuts and bolts of it. Don't hesitate to reach out to me, to shoot me a DM. Pretty easy way to get in touch with me. I'd say that a lot of, especially new legislators, like I've been in the office for about a year now, we're trying to think about things differently, right? We recognize that it's like people feel so disconnected from the government. We feel that the government's just this thing over there that's not really responsive to the people. And we're trying to bridge that gap and say, hey, what are the exact problems in the community? What can the government do to actually, be helpful, right? We want to keep the communities, let them do what they want to do, but we want to help the good things kind of blossom, if that makes sense. So I think there's a little bit of a different philosophy of government, especially among younger members, Democrat and Republican. And we also don't like the partisan nonsense, right? I'm all about working with whoever, and I don't think there's anybody that I can't find something I can agree with them on.
No, awesome. Now, this is great. I really appreciate you coming on, talking more about this. Like I said, I mean, it's a bipartisan issue that I think makes sense on both sides of the aisle. And if we can't come to agreement on this one, what can we come agreement to, right? Youth sports should be more accessible.
I agree.